Hi, everybody, and welcome back. Today we are going to be covering social bonding theory, which is authored by Travis Hershey in 1969. Travis Hershey is very special for a couple of reasons. The first one being that he was the first theorist in a long line of theorists to ask a different question. Up until that time, everybody had been saying, why do people commit crime? And Travis Hershey came on the scene and said, we're asking the wrong question. What we really should be asking here is why isn't everybody committing crime? Why don't all people commit crime? Okay. So he came at it from a different angle and it was very novel. He argued that human nature is that we seek immediate gratification and we seek what's easy, right? And that we essentially, he argues that we are all born bad, right? That we are naturally born to engage in crime. And he argues the reason that people don't break the law is not because we're naturally good. No, we're all naturally seeking immediate gratification and pleasure. He argues that people don't break the law because of social bonds, right? So I like to introduce this, and I usually, in a live classroom, I would say to my students, have you ever seen Lord of the Rings? And there's the Ring of Power. And when you put the Ring of Power on, you become invisible. People can't see you, which means you are now free to do whatever you want without consequence. Right? So you can break whatever law that you want. You can do whatever you want, and nobody will know it's you because you have the Ring of Power. You're invisible. And that's sort of how I describe social bonding theory. And then I like to say, if you had the Ring of Power, what would you do? Or a better Travis Hershey question would be, what wouldn't you do? Right? So put that little perspective on while we go through this. He says, Travis Hershey says, we can all see the value in committing crime, right? It's easy money. It's easier to take stuff than it is to go to work, to earn money, to buy stuff. It's easier when we're angry with somebody to just punch someone in the face than it is to engage in adult, mature conflict resolution, right? So he says we're all equally motivated to offend. However, he says we are not all equally bonded to society. Some of us have very strong bonds to society. Some of us have moderate bonds. Some of us have very, very poor bonds, and a very small few people have no bonds at all. He argues that those who have weak bonds or no bonds are the people who engage in crime. That people who have social bonds will not deviate because they don't want to lose those social bonds. Those social bonds are important to us. Therefore, we abide by the law so that we don't lose those social bonds. But if you don't have social bonds, or if you have them but they're very, very weak, what incentive do you have to not deviate into criminality? So Travis Hershey argues that there are 4 types of social bonds, okay? And the first is attachment. And once again, by the way, this is a theory of juvenile delinquency, and he argues that this is specific to why juveniles commit crime. I have always disagreed. I think this absolutely applies to adult criminality. You can make your own decision, right? But the first is attachment. And this is going to be your emotional closeness to others, in particular, your parents, right? If you love your parents, if you feel loved by your parents, you care what they think. You don't want to anger them. You don't want to upset them, embarrass them, disappoint them. I often point to the example, think of a time in your life when you got in trouble and your parents or one of your parents or both looked at you and said, you have embarrassed me, or you have really let me down, or I'm really disappointed in you, and how that frequently outweighs any sort of formal punishment than anybody else could ever levy. Why does it outweigh that? Because you are strongly bonded to your parents, right? You have a good, strong bond. People who don't have bonds, or very weak parental bonds, they don't care if they disappoint their parents or embarrass their parents. In fact, they probably don't even think their parents would bother to be embarrassed, right? So if you have a strong attachment bond, you're less likely to deviate. Commitment is the second social bond. So commitment is going to be your higher educational, your occupational aspirations, getting good grade at school. We call that a stake in conformity and success, that you work hard, you do well, you are building self-pride, you're building a positive reputation for being smart, being reliable, being successful. And that is a social bond that is of importance to you. You like having that stake in conformity, and that if you engage in crime, you risk it. That let's say you're on the honor roll all the time, you know, parents, teachers, everybody, they like you, they rely on you to babysit their kids, and then you get arrested. Well, you're risking all of that social adoration that comes with that commitment, right? And a lot of those people are gonna say, I don't want you babysitting my kid. And well, that's awesome, you're getting good grades, but apparently you're a delinquent, right? So people who are more strongly committed, are less likely to deviate because they have more to lose in terms of a stake of conformity. If you don't do well in school, if you don't care about school, right? If you don't care what other people think of you and people already think ill of you, you have no commitment bond. So it doesn't matter when you get in trouble because there's nobody to look at and be like, oh no, am I going to lose their good graces, that stake in conformity? Number three is the involvement bond. And this is exactly what it sounds like. It's participation in conventional activities, right? The more involved you are, the more you have to lose. The less time you have to get in trouble is a big one. So kids who play sports, kids who are in band or in drama or have an after school job or whatever are so much less likely to get in trouble simply because they are involved. They risk too much. I like to use the example here of there's always that guy in high school who he is always in trouble all the time with the principal, with whoever, but he seems to find a way to hold it together during football season. Why? Because he wants to play. And he knows if he gets in trouble, he loses his involvement bond. He will be benched or he will be taken off the team. He likes to play. So he finds a way to follow the rules, follow laws, and not get in trouble for that period of time because he is involved. It is a bond that keeps you behaving. Right? You risk losing your job. You risk losing, the ability to play sports, and you risk losing, people wanting you to be involved in their activities because you are now deemed as irresponsible, criminal, delinquent, etc. If you're not involved, you don't have sports or band or a job, you're risking nothing, right? Nobody's going to fire you because I don't have a job to be fired from, right? Nobody can kick me off the team because I didn't want to play in the first place, and I have never played, so I've got nothing to lose. But for those of us who are involved and have something to lose, we are bonded to the point that we won't take the risk of losing that involvement. Finally, the fourth element of social bonding theory is belief, right? Belief. And belief is just that the individual embraces moral validity of the law and societal norms, right? You agree with the law, you believe there's value in following it, you believe norms are there for a reason, and you're bonded to those beliefs. If you don't agree with the law, if you don't believe in it, if you don't care, if you think the rules are stupid, if you think the laws are stupid, you have no bond, and therefore you have a much more simple time of deviating from those bonds. Hershey argues that the stronger the bonds, the less likely you are to deviate into delinquency. The weaker the bonds, your likelihood is much greater. So what does this mean for prevention? What does this mean for policy? Well, I always say if you don't take anything from this class, take this one thing that someday most of you already are or will be parents, right? And someday you'll have an adolescent child. How do you keep them from getting into trouble? Well, you think Travis Hershey, get them involved, right? Get them involved. If they are too busy going to band practice, if they are too busy going to the football game to perform, if they are too busy playing sports, working at a part-time job, if they're constantly doing, guess what they're not doing is getting in trouble. Right? Because whether they even, they don't even have to like love being involved. They just have to be involved. You're too busy, right? You're too busy. And whether it's a big loss or a small loss to you, you have something to do. So that is always a way to curb delinquency, to prevent it before it happens. Get kids into sports, get kids into after school activities. 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. is the highest time of every day where juvenile delinquency is committed. Why? Kids aren't in school. Mom and dad aren't home from work yet. They have 3 hours of no supervision, nothing to do, and idle hands are the devil's playground. So get them involved. And through involvement, frequently will come the attachment to friends, the attachment to other mentor figures, the attachment to commitment, committing yourself to the things that you do. So that is the big policy implication here, is that we need to prevent it before it happens by making sure kids have strong attachments, by making sure that they are involved, that they're committed to their involvements, and that they just have a stake in conventional belief in the law. Now, this is not Hershey's only theory, which is the second part of what makes him special. He is the only theorist that has two. I have always thought social bonding theory was a very strong theory. It's very practical. It has amazing empirical support. We see that kids who play sports, have jobs, etc., they just don't engage in delinquency. I mean, it's rare. It's rare. And the kids who do, guess what? I mean, mom and dad aren't home. They don't have good relationships with them. They're not involved in anything. School, they hate school. They don't take it seriously. So it's really got a ton of research support. It's very grounded, which is why it makes it completely crazy that he abandoned the theory completely. He made social bonding theory in 1969, and a general theory of crime he developed with a partner, a guy named Gottfredson. I want to say 2001. And Hershey came out and he said, "Hey, everybody, my old theory, I'm junking it. I don't believe in it or agree with it because I've got a new one." I will give you my personal opinion here. I have always been of the belief that he just wanted to be the only guy to author two theories, because his second theory, to me, is awful. It's terrible. It's so not nearly as tangible and as instructive as his first. But you can make your own decision. So let me tell you the theory. The next theory has the wild title of a general theory of crime. And what it is Hershey wanted to be able, Hershey and Gottfredson, the dual authors, wanted to be able to explain all crime. They wanted to develop one theory that explains all crime. Typically, theories can't explain all crime. They might explain certain types of crime. They might explain adult criminality, or they might explain juvenile criminality. But they can't cover everything. And one of the biggest complaints about most theories is that they can't explain white collar crime. And Hershey and Gottfredson made a theory that explains both violent crime, it explains drug crime, and it explains white collar crime. And it's very difficult to have a theory encompass all of the above. So, a general theory of crime. There are two main postulates to this theory. Okay, the first one is self-control. And Gottfredson and Hershey argue that people who engage in crime, and by the way, this is an explanation of adult criminality or criminality at any age, not just juvenile delinquency. But he argues that people who engage in crime simply just have low self-control. Right? You do not have self-control. You don't have, when an impulse strikes you, there is no thinking process. There is no, should I do this? There's no weighing costs and benefits. You get an impulse to do something and boom, you do it. You have no ability to weigh the costs and benefits. You just react to whatever impulse comes through yourself at the time. So criminals have low impulse control. Okay. He argues, Gottfredson and Hershey argue, that if you have the intersection of a person with low self-control and criminal opportunity at the same time, crime happens. That is literally the theory. And I think it is the weakest, lamest theory ever. It's almost like, okay, like you felt the need to explain that, but it is his theory. And he argues that people with low self-control and opportunity, when they're together, crime happens. And that is any kind of crime. That is violent crime. That you made me angry. I can't control myself. Boom, I punch you in the face, or I pull out a knife and I stab you. Right? That holds true for white collar crimes. I'm working as an accountant in this company, and look at that. I found an opportunity where if this $50,000 went missing, there is no trail and nobody will ever know. Right? I have no impulse to control myself from not taking that money, and there's an opportunity. Boom, crime. Right? So, according to Gottfredson and Hershey, it gets back to that low impulse. The reason this happens so much is that crime offers that short-term, immediate gratification, quick money, avoiding aggravations in life, avoiding working hard, etc. And that people with low self-control engage in a lot of impulsive behaviors, a lot of substance abuse, a lot of smoking, gambling, high-risk behaviors, etc. They also argue crime is not planned. It is literally, it is spontaneous. It is when that opportunity and that impulsive person meet, and kaboom, it happens. Right? That there's very little premeditation to none at all. He also said, or they also say, that people with low self-control tend to struggle at conventional activities like work, like family, things that require structure, things that require discipline. So opportunity is a must, right? And they argue crime has nothing to do with the ecology. It has nothing to do with social bonds. It is all about differences in the individual and whether or not the person has the discipline and self-control to resist. They argue that the origins of self-control have to be introduced early in life, with parents A, monitoring their children, B, recognizing deviant behavior when it occurs, and C, punishing the behavior immediately. If one of those three things are missing, you are going to create an impulsive human being. And as they get older, they will not lose that impulsivity. And everybody eventually is presented with opportunity, which is how they explain all crime under a general theory of crime. Not the best. They do argue, however, that as you get older, you will lose impulsivity and you will age out of crime, which is why most people over 35 are not getting arrested, right? Not the best theory, in my opinion.